Welcome into the Your Illini Nation pregame show. We got a good one for you today. The Illini hosting 19th ranked Kansas, a rematch, of course, from a year ago, but also a sellout crowd today. It has all the makings of being an exciting game for a matchup that you would probably usually think basketball, but it's an exciting one on the football. Two programs that are kind of hoping to be on the come up. Certainly Kansas has displayed it with the bowl games the last couple of years, but this is a big game for Illinois.
It's a huge game for Illinois. The crowd has bought into it. It's the first sellout since 2016 against North Carolina. They're in. They're ready to see this program take the step, and Illinois can take that step tonight they can get a win over Kansas and kind of show that it is year 4. This program has gone forward. And it's just such a good comparison from where it was a year ago, Glenn, where they leave Lawrence after really just playing a bad game of football. And now you have a lot of the same faces back. Obviously, every year there's new faces in the mix. You have a lot of those same faces back, and you can show progress year over year. And I think that's a big selling point to people who want to see that progress taken.
I suppose I should introduce ourselves. We should have started with that.
Should have done
Glenn
that.
Kinley, WCIA 3 Sports Director, Joey Wagner with 24/7 Sports and the Illini Inquirer. Were you surprised that this game was a sellout? I knew people would be into it, but I didn't know if they'd get in it this quickly, week 2.
Yeah, that's where I was too. I thought there was going to be a sellout. Illinois would have needed to come out, get 3-0, maybe 4-0 if they can go to Lincoln and get one. But it tells me that fans want to be on board. They see it's a 6 o'clock game. It's a ranked team. It's a team that beat Illinois a year ago. They want to jump on board. But, look, it's hard for some fans. That cannon will get you.
The cannon's good to go for whatever the Illini get on the board here, in case you were wondering.
It's hard for some fans to jump on board because they've done this before, right? They've done this. They've been at this game, and then Illinois has lost. So I think they're so ready to see this take that step forward with year 4 of Brett Bielema, and the sellout shows that.
What did it take to get that so early in the year? Is it something about this team specifically? Is it something about this coaching staff? Is it maybe a certain player's returning quarterback certainly doesn't hurt?
Yeah,
to get some involvement for some fans who maybe would have an excuse to not be involved right away because they got hurt a year ago.
Yeah, I think that helps. I think seeing Luke Altmaier come back, seeing Caden Fagan come back, you have continuity, your quarterback, your coordinator spots, your head coach. I think it's a ranked team at 6 o'clock, right? It's a beautiful day.
Yeah.
It sets
Why
up,
wouldn't you want to be
That's
here?
right. It sets up really, really well for a moment to happen. Now, Illinois has got to take that moment, but if this is an 11 o'clock game, is it a sellout? I don't know, right? But seeing 19 Kansas, knowing what happened a year ago, perfect timing. It's there for the taking.
It's an important one for a number of reasons. A ranked win would be big. It certainly would give you some momentum, give you some confidence. You win your first rematch game of the year, which Bielema has talked about quite a bit. They play a bunch of rematch games this year. All the teams they play this year that they played last year, they didn't beat last year. So it's a bunch of redemption opportunities. It's the first of that. Also, it's a sellout crowd, so I think this is an important game for keeping the fans engaged, to make sure that they're here next week and to make sure that if you do drop it in Lincoln, you don't lose them for the year. This is one, to me, it's not a conference game, but it's one that if you win it, the fan base was sold out today. They're going to be even more locked in for future weeks.
That's right. They want to be here. Yeah. They've done this before. And even if, look, a win, absolutely, right? They'll come back. If you lose by 5 points, if you just show that,
give them something to be excited about.
You might have a few people drop off, and I understand that, but I still think a large amount of people would say, okay, you can see it. You can see this team, especially defensively. We have to be honest about it. Defensively, people want to see that step forward. Now, last year in Lincoln, it was offense and defense that was the problem. But I think defensively, they're ready to see Illinois move up.
Where in that defense is the spot that you're looking at most closely within the Illini defense for today, specifically against the Kansas offense, that they have to be good?
Yeah, I think it's the secondary, and a lot of it's how they align. Last week, Tyler Strain was out. We thought he was going to start in that nickel position. I still think that. But then that would move Xavier Scott back outside. And then is Terrence Brooks. Are we going to see more of Terrence Brooks today? He was a huge offseason acquisition. You didn't see him until the fourth quarter. They talked about consistency with him. So kind of how that all shuffles out. And then Matthew Bailey's back. And Matthew Bailey did not play in Lawrence last year. He came back for Penn State the following week, played 22 snaps, was hurt again. He's a difference maker out there. You can feel it. You can see it when he's on the field. There's a lot of Sidney Brown vibes. I caught up with Sidney earlier this week to talk about that. He's kind of that linebacker that was attacked in space last year, but he's also, that's what that safety position is, right? It's effectively a linebacker spot. His presence, I think, it could really be meaningful for Illinois.
Yeah, of course. The Illini are looking to get pressure on the quarterback. Jalen Daniels is a guy who's been really, really good when he's healthy. He hasn't been healthy enough, and last week was his first game back in, 8 or 10 months, because he missed most of the season last year.
Almost after the Illinois game.
Exactly.
In fact,
he played Illinois. He's healthy for Illinois again, but he wasn't healthy most of that year. So he got in there against Lindenwood, but he still only played, I think, a half of football. He has not played much football in the last 8 months, and Illinois is going to have to look to put some pressure on, put him in situations that he hasn't been in maybe since the Illinois game a year ago.
Yeah, they need to get pressure on him. He's a difference maker. You've seen it, Glenn. We've all seen it. When he's healthy, the combination of his arms and his legs, some of the throws, if you go back and watch this game last year, some of the throws
one of his best throws we've seen from Jalen Daniels was against Illinois when he scrambled out and found Luke Grimm downfield.
Half. It was an incredible throw. He can change the game. Then you pair him with their running back squad led by Devin Neal. It's a really scary offense. So this defense has to take a step forward. And I don't know where you start. You start with Devin Neal? Do you start with Jalen Daniels? I don't know. Like, those are two problems for the Illinois defense.
When you look at the Illinois defensive line, obviously lost a couple really good players from last year, but KU's offensive line lost a couple really good players from last year. The battle in the trenches, give me your thoughts there, and who might it be on the Illinois D-line? I'm not saying who's going to have 3 sacks, but who could at least wreak some havoc there?
Well, they need Seth Coleman to be that guy off the edge.
Yeah.
That's what he came back for, to be that consistent disruptor off the edge. And Gabe Ackes had his hand in the ground last week, and that was a huge development, something a lot of people have wanted to see for a while because he is a massive human being.
Yeah.
So that, and let's be honest, we were concerned about the Illinois defensive line. So to see Gabe have his hand down there, and then you have an Alec Bryan and a Joe Barner, a freshman out kind of where he used to be, that's where you can create more pressure. And Brett Bielema talked about that spot that Gabe's playing in the defense. It's kind of hard to double that spot. And if you don't double him, that's a struggle for opposing offensive line. So I think him and Seth Coleman, that's going to be the story from here through the end of the season, is those two being disruptive on that defensive front.
I want to talk about the Illini receivers because I don't know about you. I thought they looked really good a week ago. Obviously, Pat Bryant was great, but I thought the catch of the day was one that was not called complete. It's Zachary Franklin in the end zone. Had that been really completion, he might have led SportsCenter that night. That was a heck of a play. They got a tough test tonight, though. We'll dig into the Jayhawks more here in a few minutes. I covered KU for a couple of years when I was out in Kansas, so we can talk about them plenty. But I'll start with this. Their secondary is really good. 2 preseason All-Big 12 cornerbacks, a couple safeties that they like a lot. It's a test for the Illinois receivers. You looked good against EIU. Can you do it against a ranked opponent?
It's a test for their receivers. It's a test for Luke Altmaier.
It is.
Luke Altmaier, it's probably going to come down to him and Jalen Daniels having to outduel each other in this one, right? And those receivers, I was encouraged with what I saw with them last year. I think last week, we knew what Pat Bryant was going to do. Pat Bryant's a very consistent player at this point. I'm wondering if we see more Zachary Franklin in the slot. That's been kind of the storyline I pitched my wagon to with the receiver group. And I think they didn't want to show it against Eastern Illinois because why would you if you don't have to? And they put him in the slot. And then Malik Elzy showed, that very nice touchdown grab he had. He had a catch and run where he broke a few tackles. The combination of Pat Bryant, Malik Elzy, Zachary Franklin, if you can work all 3 of them on the field.
Tight ends involved after that.
That's right. Yeah. And the running backs, the 2 running back sets, I thought was a major story to come out of last week. I like the number of receivers they have. I don't think you're going to see as many receivers against Eastern Illinois as you are against Kansas, but how do they deploy to Zachary Franklin tonight? Yeah,
it will be a big factor. Going down the list of things to know for Kansas. We talked about Jalen Daniels a little bit. We talked about Devin Neal. They got another really good running back. Daniel Highshaw is a weapon out of that backfield, and they will use him a lot. I think some of our Illini fans or viewers who might be watching this are focused on Devin Neal, and then they're going to see another guy get the ball and run a couple guys over, and who the heck is this guy? Yeah. I thought we stopped Devin Neal on 2nd down, and now they got this guy on 3rd down. Daniel Highshaw is certainly a guy to look out for, and they have a trio of 5th-year senior wide receivers who are about as experienced as anybody in the Big 12 who have been really good for them. They certainly have a really good connection with Jalen Daniels because they've all been there a long time. They're going to test the Illinois defense. I think this is a game we're going to find out a lot about the Illinois defense specifically because this is a high-powered Kansas offense. The other test that or challenge that Illinois is facing is how different is the Kansas offense with a new offensive coordinator. Andy Kotelnicki's now in the Big Ten with Penn State, and so they have a new offensive coordinator who's at Baylor last year, Jeff Grimes, and I think he might put his own twist on things, but I think he also knows that the Kansas offense was really good, and he's not going to change. He's not going to fix what's not broken.
No, that seems to be the vibe, is that Kansas is still going to do what Kansas does offensively, and then you bring in Grimes and his philosophy. How does all that merge? Is it good for Illinois to see that in week 2? Is they're still working on that? I don't know. I mean, but Andy Kotelnicki was a really good offensive coordinator. He's going to be a head coach at some point. I think we all know that, the way his career is going. Yeah, this Kansas offense is incredibly high-powered, and that's where some of the concerns for Illinois is, can you stop the run? Can your defense take a step forward? I don't know how many stops you're going to get.
Yeah.
I know you need the offense to make it so you're going to have to go. It's going to be a back and forth here. But yeah, that Kansas offense is incredibly high-powered. You saw it last year in Lawrence. That final score is 34-23. It was not that close.
No, it wasn't.
It was not that close.
Yeah.
That Kansas ran away with it early. They
Yeah.
scored at the end of half. That's something to really watch. That's something
Yeah.
Brett Bielema has hammered home a lot, is end of half, end of game
Yeah.
possessions. And Kansas got him on that last year. So that'll be something to monitor. That offense has got a lot of weapons.
I think a hot start in this game would be huge for Illinois, not just because of obviously you'd love to start playing with the lead, but get the crowd involved. If you have a sellout crowd, give them something to get excited for. So when you get to that third down near the end of the first half, the people are jacked up, the people are involved, and you want to go into that second half. Keep people here, feel like you're at least in the game, and feel ready to go. It's a Kansas team that I think the biggest emphasis, and we touched on it, is just getting Jalen Daniels uncomfortable. Make him feel a hit that he hasn't felt in a while, and make him roll out of the pocket. We didn't see him run much last week. In the past, he's been a quarterback who can run, but we don't know. Then he had a back injury that kept him out for 8 weeks. Can he still run? The coaches have kind of hinted that they want him to be able to, but we didn't see it much last week. So make him run. And then if you find out that he's not going to, then you learn that. The challenge that both teams are faced with, which shows that they had good week ones, is that Kansas didn't show much in week one against Lindenwood. They got their starters out of there in a hurry. They didn't run anything crazy and give anything away. And Illinois kept things pretty simple on both sides of the ball against Eastern Illinois. So coaches, I'm sure, are navigating what all are they going to do, because we didn't see much in week one.
We didn't, but Illinois threw some stuff out there that I remember thinking, why is it that you're doing this in this game? Gabe Ackes on the defensive line, the Aiden Lawfrey, Caden Fagan, two-back sets where Caden Fagan's a lead blocker. They're putting that out there, I would assume, so Kansas prepares for it. So what's the counter to the counter, right? Like that's kind of that.
Now that you prepared for this, we're going to do this instead.
That's right. So that what they showed was obviously intentional last week against Eastern Illinois, but how does that play now? And I think that's such a fascinating underlying storyline in this is how does Barry Lunny build off that? What are his pivots there? I thought he was really creative last week. We saw the quarterback get under center. Glenn, that is a rarity. That did not happen much last year, and you saw Luke Altmaier do that and get more comfortable. So there's just little wrinkles that you wonder how that's going to look tonight.
Let's talk more about Luke Altmaier. I think you'd agree he was really good last week. He didn't make any plays that were maybe wowing. The one in the end zone to Elsley was good, and a couple of the Pat Bryant throws were good, but he didn't. You didn't leave and say, we have the greatest quarterback in the country. I think Bielema in the postgame press conference said, he played good. I don't think he's the front runner for the Heisman just yet. Maybe that's what he needs to do, though, is just make the plays that are given to him and not try to be too special. I mean, if he can make them, great, but don't force the spectacular play that's going to be a highlight reel for years to come. Rather, take the 6-yard gain when it's given to you, and sometimes take the 2-yard loss when it's given to you, rather than the 6 or 8-yard loss or the fumble or whatever it is.
Yeah, Luke Altmaier's growth. I thought he did show a lot of growth last week against Eastern Illinois. I thought the pass to Pat Bryant in the end zone was incredible. Yeah. He had some plays where you're like, wow, and he didn't put the ball in harm's way. Maybe one or two times in that far end zone. You're like, ooh, I don't know why you're throwing that.
Right.
But I think you're going to see more of him with his legs tonight. Because he had that big long run for a touchdown against Kansas a year ago. You're not going to run against Eastern Illinois. You don't really need to.
Right.
That is an aspect of his game that I think can really take this offense up a notch. I think you'll see that tonight. But I think he has to be, Luke Altmaier, I think he's a top half of the Big Ten quarterback. You can figure out where that fits in. Somewhere in that 6 to 8 range would probably make sense. He needs to be a dude tonight. He needs to take that step, if that makes sense, to be a dude and outduel a quarterback who is a dude, who could lead this team to a Big 12 championship game appearance. I think he's got it in him. I think you've heard that emotional growth for him over the last couple months. Now it's time to – it's a big one, right? Yeah. It's a big one. It's time to take that step.
Certainly the Kansas defense is going to try to force him to make plays that maybe he hasn't made in a while, or that he's not quite comfortable making, and we're going to find out if he can make those. Correct me if you think I'm wrong. I think maybe the Illini might have to – we talk about establish the run. They might have to establish the pass a little bit and figure out, can you beat these really good corners and safeties? And then once you do that, okay, you back them off a little bit. Now you get Caden Fagan the ball. I'm not saying they're going to throw the ball a bunch of times on the first drive, but what I'm saying is, and I'll say this about covering Kansas, they have a couple of really good cornerbacks. Kobe Bryant specifically is fantastic, but he's gotten burned a few times. He's kind of a guy that makes a ton of incredible plays, and Mello Dotson has the program record for pick sixes. He ends up in the end zone as much as some receivers, but those are guys that have also gotten beat sometimes. They're really, really good 95% of the time. The other 5%, that sometimes they get cooked. And so tonight, it's going to be a question of, can Illinois just beat them a couple times and force that defense to play honest? And once they have to back off, then give Caden Fagan the ball over and over and over.
It's going to be based off Barry Lunny's RPO game. That's Barry Lunny's calling card. He likes the RPO. So which way do they go? Do they start passing it? Do they start running it and play the RPO off of that? Caden Fagan hadn't yet broken through at this point.
Yeah.
A year ago. He got in late. He had a 5-yard carry. He's a lot different than he was then.
Yeah.
And I thought 16 carries against Eastern, that's fine. I would expect him and Aiden Lawfrey to get a lot of opportunity tonight. And Caden Fagan, if you've listened, Brett Bielema, Thad Ward, Barry Lunny have kind of started to put the gas on that fire a little bit, that he's starting to get closer and closer to what they think he could be. He's one of the most talented players on the roster. I expect them to try to let him get established tonight, then play off the RPO and hit those quick passes that Barry Lunny at UTSA came in here and beat Illinois with back in 2021. That RPO can be really effective, and if you can get the run game going on top of that, those two will work really well hand in hand.
If you're just now joining us, this is the WCIA 3, Your Illini Nation pregame show. Illinois, 19th ranked Kansas, go tonight at 6 p.m. We're about an hour and 15 minutes from kickoff. We'll be here with you for about 15 more minutes. Let's talk more about Caden Fagan. Where have you seen him grow in the last year? And I want to hear more about what you've heard from the coach, because I am relatively new here. But I know that when you're here every day and you listen to him, they might compliment a player, but when you talk to that coach twice a week, you hear differences in how they talk about certain players. And I think Caden Fagan's a guy who they talk about him, and it's not just they're never going to say anything bad about their starting running back, right? But when they talk about him, they really hype him up.
They do. I asked Thad Ward, right as training camp was winding down, I said, what was important for him this training camp? He said, to take that next step. Last year, he had 500 yards as a freshman. His season was cut short due to injury. That next step is to be one of those Brett Bielema running backs. I think Brett Bielema, I'm looking for the quote now that he had on Thursday when he said, hey, we kind of keep trying to gas Caden Fagan up a little bit here, that you can do this. You can take that step. I'm paraphrasing Brett Bielema a little bit. But it's clear that they're starting to build for him a little bit more to be that main guy. Now, that's not Chase Brown in 2022 with 300 carries.
He doesn't have to be, though.
He doesn't, because you have other options at the running back room. Luke Altmaier is, again, a top half of the Big Ten quarterback. But they want to run the ball. They're not going to be stubborn about running the ball. I think there's a key difference there. And a lot of people, when they think of Bielema offenses, they think 3 yards, 3 yards.
You don't need to run the ball when it doesn't make sense to.
Correct. They want to throw it around. His teams have been balanced, but you can just kind of feel a little bit more that they're either seeing that Caden Fagan is ready to take that step, or he has taken that. We just haven't seen it yet because it was Eastern Illinois. I
think a big factor, and you mentioned it, but I want to circle back to it, is both quarterbacks and their running ability. I think in a way, Kansas is going to be ready for Altmaier to run because of what he did last year. But he didn't run much in week one. And again, we talked about kind of establishing the pass, which sounds silly to say, but if he can almost lull that defense into a sleep and hit him for a 6-yard gain and give it to Fagan for a first down and hit him for a tight end for a 3-yard gain and get it to Lawfrey for 9 yards, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, shoot, and then he can run, It can't be maybe the go-to. Maybe you do break off a big play, an explosive play on the quarterback run when you get him to sleep. But if you can establish it with your other guys, let that defense be so worried about covering, Zachary Franklin or whoever it is, that they almost turn their back to Luke Altmaier and he can take off. He's got to be ready to do it, but he can't be too reliant on it.
That's right. I thought he did a good job of that for the most part last year. College rushing stats are just, it's ridiculous how they do it. His stats don't look 125 yards because of sacks. That's right. But he was a really effective, dual threat quarterback. I don't know that I would say as dual threat as a Jalen Daniels or quarterbacks you've seen come through here like an AJ Bush, who's maybe more one threat. But he can be really effective on the ground. And you're right. If you can make your 6-yard, those RPO passes to your wide receivers and let them get some yards after the catch, you can get it to Fagan and Lawfrey and let them kind of go. Then you add that wrinkle on there. That's a lot to prepare for. We have talked about the Kansas offense being high-powered. It is. I'm really bullish on the Illinois offense. I think they've got a lot of weapons. They've got a good coordinator. I think they're maybe being slept on a little bit because it's the Illinois offense, and historically that's not always been a great thing. But I think they've got pieces in place there to really make things difficult for this Kansas defense.
I know you guys are covering recruiting closely as anybody for the University of Illinois. Illini Inquirer, 24/7 Sports. There's a lot of guys here for this game. Recruits, prospects, some that are highly touted. Does that make this game even bigger than it already was for the fact that it's ranked and it's a sellout, but now also you got a lot of recruits that maybe would like to see an Illini win?
Yeah, I think win helps, right? To show that, again, that you've taken that step as a program. I think this being sold out.
And that's got to help. For those recruits to come here and see that this is a place that cares about more than just basketball.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's got to help in that regard. I don't think a lot of recruits base their decisions on one win, but to see kind of what this can be here. I think that's been the thing with Illinois for so long is it can be this, it can be that. You've seen flashes. You know, there's a stretch in 2022 where it's like, oh, they're realizing kind of everything here.
Yeah.
But I think just to have those recruits in the crowd, J.C. Davis, Mount Zion, stud tight end, one of the hired 4-star kid in the class of 2026. He'll be here. He's a huge target for them, right? So to get him on campus, he's been Florida State and Auburn in the last 8 days, right? He's all over the place. But kind of credit to Illinois for putting their chips in and saying, we feel good about who we are. Come to this game. We'll deliver in what we think we can do here. And we don't care how many top-ranked prospects are here and fear about a loss or this. Like, you can kind of see them betting on it a little bit and thinking, like, bring them here for this. We can deliver.
Can you give me – I don't want to spoil everything behind the paywall on your site. Can you give me another one or two guys that maybe are here today that, you know, either we might see in the orange and blue someday or that would be big pickups for Illinois?
Yeah, Casey Thoman from Olney, a big offensive lineman, 3-star kid. He's the guy who's been here a number of times. He'll be here today. He's absolutely massive offensive lineman, which has been the standard here at Illinois with Brett Bielema.
When in doubt, get a big guy up front to block.
Yeah, and then they'll have some other commits on hand too. Carson Boyd, the quarterback. He and Cardinal Ritter were just in Rochester last night for a win over a really, really good Rockets program. Those are the highlighters, really. J.C. Anderson's a big one. He's a national recruit, and Illinois has been on him for more than a year now. They've done a good job with his recruitment.
We'll cycle through a couple more things. We've got about 10 more minutes here. Let's talk about – we talked about this before we got on air here, the trenches. And specifically, I think we talked about the KU O-line, the Illinois D-line. But on the other side, KU lost a couple really good defensive linemen. The Austin Booker from KU is now with the Bears, so our
people in
fans
Illinois
might know
like
him well.
Now.
Now they can like him now
again.
that he's not going after the Illinois quarterback. But they also lost Gage Keys. He transferred to Auburn. Who is it that needs to be good and needs to become not a starter on that offensive line, but a staple on that offensive line where you almost say the type of guy where you say, if he's blocking him, we're good, you know?
Yeah, that's J.C. Davis, the left tackle. They brought him here as a transfer from New Mexico to do that. Thought he was solid. He's a pass pro guy. He probably could have flirted with the NFL draft, in all honesty, this past offseason. Came to Illinois. They have really high hopes for him, and they should. He's an incredibly talented left tackle. Really a huge recruiting win for them to get a left tackle. It's a premier position to get a left tackle out of the portal. I was really impressed with Melvin Priestley, another transfer tackle from Grambling last week. He had some blocks that he just moved people 5-6 yards.
Few pancakes. And Melvin, correct me if I'm wrong, because you've been with him all fall camp. He seems like he's settled in. I wouldn't have known from talking to him that he just got here this offseason.
No, he's really settled in. And to be honest, he was kind of an under-the-radar transfer addition when they got him. They get Kevin Wigginton, who started games at Michigan State, and they get J.C. Davis. And you think, okay, plug those two guys in. And then Melvin Priestley gets here in the spring and just builds himself to be that starting right tackle. And it wasn't really a question throughout the back end of spring and into fall camp. Credit to him. Very powerful, very physical, quick. I thought he was really good. There's some stuff to tune up, still a little bit raw. The right side of the offensive line, Zy Chrysler, I didn't think he had his best game last week. And we kind of heard, maybe they'll see more offensive linemen. Is that a Hunter Whiteneck? Is that a Brandon Henderson today? Brandon Henderson's a guy with an incredibly high ceiling, a sophomore from St. Louis. I'd be curious to see if you see more of those two rotate in today. Josh Geske I thought was fine. Josh Kreutz I thought was fine. But what happens at right guard?
I always think the O-line is an interesting spot because it's great to have depth. It's great to be able to play 8 or 9 or 10 guys. But yet you also do kind of love when you have one guy where you say, no, we need him on the field every time. When he's good enough to where you're like, yeah, we have depth, but we're not going to use him. Let's get a uniform matchup for our viewers tonight. Illinois in the all-orange tonight. Kansas will wear the blue pants, it looks like, white tops, and a blue helmet. What are your thoughts on the all-orange? And I like the helmets a lot.
Yeah, that's a good helmet. That's a good combination. Those helmets are really cool. I know they're not for everybody. Jeremy Werner, not a helmet guy, not that helmet guy. It's good. I mean, it's the orange out. They're going all into it, right? I think it's going to look really good. I think you obviously see an orange all over. Not a lot of blue tonight by design in the stands.
Yeah.
That's a good combo, and I like that Kansas combo too, to be honest with you. They did the blackout last year, right, in Lawrence?
Yeah.
That's not how I envision the University of Kansas.
But it's not KU-esque.
Yeah, this is a good uniform.
The student section's already filling up. I think they're currently heckling the Kansas kickers.
They've been really supportive of Brett Bielema. They have shown up here. That is not always been the case.
And he shouted them out just on Thursday. He talked about how they were, even for the Eastern game, that place, that section and a couple others were packed.
That's not always been the case. We've seen student sections over the years that have been very, very slightly attended. So they bought into this. There's an excitement on campus. I know people we've talked to said they can feel it. The students are buying in.
I want to ask you, because this is a matchup, if you look at Illinois, Kansas, and you say sellout, you think, okay, that's going to be a great basketball game. With this one, give me a player on Illinois' basketball roster for this year that you think if he had to switch sports, he could be a good football player.
The answer was Terrence Shannon last year.
Yeah.
I think he could play about any sport that he wants.
Right.
Ty Rodgers.
Okay.
I think Ty Rodgers could be like an edge rusher.
And Bielema would love his leadership too.
I think Bielema would. Tight end would be good.
Okay.
If Bielema could sneak Ty Rodgers across Kirby and let him come play tight end, I think that would be good.
Yeah, certainly. Lots of excitement for Illini women's basketball, Illini men's basketball, certainly Illini football. You got it all on your site, Illini Inquirer, 24/7 Sports. Where can people find you? And what should they be looking out for? I know you're doing a podcast probably right after this or tomorrow morning.
Yep, a podcast right after, live podcast on our YouTube channel right after the game. I'm on Twitter at Mr. Wagner25. We'll have recruiting updates for days. And they've got a lot of visitors here today. We'll have a post-game podcast, reaction stories. Women's basketball got a huge commitment over the course of this week with five-star Destiny Jackson. We've had
the top
stories on that.
And you were up there for that one.
Jeremy went.
Okay, Jeremy went.
He had a great story on her. We followed up with kind of what that means. Derek Piper's always on top of basketball news and stories and analysis. So we try to keep it pretty busy.
Absolutely. I'll ask you this as we are in football season, but we talk about a couple other sports. How much in the time that you've been covering Illinois, how much can this set the tone for the athletic year? If you get the fans engaged and you get people coming from all over the state and you get people fired up for football, I could be wrong. People are also fired up for Illinois basketball, but I think for any sport, whether that's women's basketball or even the volleyball season, they're off to a hot start. When you get people involved in football, they're going to be fired up and just be locked in on Illinois sports, I think.
Yeah, they are. Football's a driver, right? I mean, it's such a sense of community. The tailgate lots were packed today, Glenn, as we came up here. It does. It kind of drives everything. I know other programs will bring recruits here when they have them on campus. They bring them to football games and kind of show them the atmosphere and what it is. So it's huge. And Josh Whitman's been really, really open about that. And obviously, there's a lot of financial implications for football to be good, right? It drives everything in the athletic department. They need football to take the step. That's why this is so important, to keep those tickets coming in, people excited. It helps everything trickle down the athletic department.
We're just over an hour from kickoff, getting ready to sign off here. Before we do that, do you have a key to the game or one big thing that you're looking at?
You got to stop the run. I just keep coming back to that. It's my biggest question about Illinois coming into the season was how does that
up against a really good running back?
They are, two of them, as you mentioned. That's right, and a really good quarterback who can run. So can you stop the run? Can you contain Jalen Daniels? That's huge for me. And if they show they can do that, Gabe Akis makes me feel a little bit better that they can do that because he's so talented. But if they can't stop Devin Neal, and then you still got to worry about Jalen Daniels, that could be a long night for this defense.
I'll give you my key, and I'll just say I think getting your wide receivers involved in the pass game, beating a couple of really good corners, a couple of really good safeties on that Kansas defense, and doing that maybe early, setting that tone and letting the defense know that you have a passing threat. And whether that's Luke Altmaier making a sensational play or just beating them, death by paper cuts, a 4-yard, 5-yard, 2-yard gain here and there. I think setting that tone early could be important. It's Illinois. It's Kansas, the 19th ranked Jayhawks. Illinois seeking, of course, its first ranked win of the year. It will be played in front of the first sellout crowd here at Memorial Stadium since 2016. Neither of us were covering the Illini then. This will be our first taste of a packed house and certainly the first under Brett Bielema. So exciting stuff. We will, of course, have the post-game show for you right back here on our digital channels, WCIA 3 Sports. When Brett Bielema comes to the podium or the table or the microphone, wherever he's talking, we'll have it live for you. And, of course, we'll have coverage in our newscast in the coming days. As Illinois looks to improve to 2-0, thanks for joining us for the Your Illini Nation pregame show.